Members, good afternoon. This is the appointed time. We have a quorum. This is the panel on security, and this is a special meeting. We'll adjourn the meeting at 4 p.m. First item on the agenda, law and order situation in Hong Kong in 2024. Let's invite the administration to come in. We have representatives from the Hong Kong Police Force, led by the Commissioner of Police. As per our standing practice, all members have been invited to join this panel in the discussion of this item. I'd also like to draw members' attention to 4 other items that members have proposed to discuss. They will be discussed at the same meeting. The first item is following up and responding to cases in which Hong Kong residents were suspected of being lured to Southeast Asian countries and detained. Now, let me welcome the Commissioner of Police and his team. And I continue with the 4 items. The second one is combating bagging activities in public places. The third one, latest situation on the work of preventing and combating online frauds. And the fourth one, aviation security and counterterrorism work upon commissioning of the third runway system in the Hong Kong International Airport. So, Commissioner of Police, when you're ready, you may start your presentation. Members, if you want to speak, please also press the button. I see that we have a long queue here. 15 members would like to speak. So, Commissioner, you have the floor. Please brief us on Hong Kong's law and order situation in 2024. This is an issue close to the heart of members. So, when you're ready. Please switch on the commissioner's mic, please. Madam Chair, members. In the beginning of the year of the snake, may I wish everybody good health and happiness. I'd like to give an account of the overall law and order situation of Hong Kong in 2024, matters relating to national security in Hong Kong. I will also be taking questions from the floor. On overall crime situation in Hong Kong in 2024, we recorded 94,747 cases, up by 5% comparing to the figure in 2023. For violent crime, we recorded 10,485, up by 3.6%. The overall detection rate was 30.4%, comparable to the rate in 2023. Now, excluding deception cases, other crimes fell by 185 cases in total last year. The detection rate rose by 1.7%, and that means 47.9%. And in this regard, we can see that the overall increase in number of crimes has to do with deception cases as well as a rise in detection rate. Now, for violent crimes, the figure increase is a result of naked chat blackmail cases, and we also have a rise in the number of rape cases. As for other traditional crimes such as homicide, burglary, wounding and serious assault, serious drug offenses, criminal damage, and arson, we've recorded a drop. Now, for these traditional crime figures last year, the figures were on the low side, and many of these categories of crimes have reached a record low. The detection rate also reached a record high. I will give you more details in a moment, but I will now first focus on deception cases, and then I will brief members on other types of cases. In 2024, we recorded 44,480 cases, up by 11.7%. 60% of these cases related to online frauds, accounting for 46.9% of the overall deception cases. In 2024, we began to see a new modus operandi of impersonating customer service personnel. And that's 5,575 cases in 2024, far higher than the overall increase. That's 4,600 cases. Now, through a series of efforts by the police, including enforcement and education, from July last year, we recorded the peak. That's 1,100 cases. Now it has come down to around 500 cases a month on average in the fourth quarter. We'll continue to make a sustained effort in this regard. As for the trend of crime in the past few years, in 2022 and 2023, on a yearly basis, there was a 40% increase. This year, the increasing trend has tapered to 11.7%, with the amount involved dropping to $30 million. This is a result of the police's work, as well as the Scam Meter app and the collaborative efforts of stakeholders. In the past year, we have been working with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, the banking sector, as well as the telecommunications sector in rolling out some enhanced measures, such as the Scam Meter app. For example, we've also broadened the scope of suspicious account alert mechanism, and the Anti-Deception Coordination Center has also been very significant in this regard, in sending alerts to potential victims. Last year, we intercepted 14.8% of the 1,372 deception cases. Now, the ADAC also successfully intercepted 3,000 deception cases as they emerged. In order to enhance public awareness of fraud, in February 2024, we enhanced the Scam Meter Plus app. We included a platform to receive public complaints. When it comes to suspicious websites and suspicious phone calls, this app will issue notification. On enforcement, we arrested over 10,000 people in 2024. They were involved in various types of frauds and money laundering offenses, and that's an increase of 13.6%. 700 people were mute account holders. We also expedited investigation and step up penalties in order to investigate into the mule account cases. In 2024, around 1,500 people were prosecuted for money laundering offenses. That's 2.3 times the figure in 2023. And we also applied with the court for increase in sentences. Last year, as at the end of last year, the mute account holders received heavier penalties, up by 10 to 13%, and that involved 47 such account holders with a maximum penalty ranging from 21 months to 75 months. We also tackled fraud syndicates. We joined the law enforcement agencies in the mainland and overseas in a number of operations. For example, between May and August last year, we worked with police in the mainland and Singapore, Malaysia, and in these operations, altogether we arrested close to 290 people. We'll continue to maintain close liaison with overseas LEAs in terms of exchange of intelligence, and we'll also mount joint operations to combat deception. We're also concerned about using AI deepfake technology in deception cases. Last year in October, and this year in January, we cracked down on 2 such syndicates leveraging on AI deepfake technologies. They are local syndicates. Altogether, we arrested 58 people, including the masterminds of these 2 syndicates, totaling proceeds of up to $400 million. Now, the AI deepfake technology is deployed to commit romance scams as well as investment scams involving cryptocurrencies. Victims of these crimes were located in Asia and other places, and we have confidence in cracking down on these cases. On publicity and public education, we have been mounting publicity by posting ads on ferries, trams, minibuses. We also make use of the Scam Meter app to hammer home the message. We also leverage on the care teams to work at the community level. We will continue to mount different publicity channels, including traditional media platforms, TV shows, social media, will make use of video footages and texting to disseminate the message. Now, in 2024, we recorded 19 homicide cases, a drop by 32%. 10 cases involved domestic violence or family violence. The remaining 9 cases related to dangerous driving causing death and industrial accidents. The detection rate for homicide cases was 100%, and that's the for the crime figure. It was a record low since 1969. The third lowest. The detection rate was 100%. As for wounding and serious assault in 2024, we recorded a slight 1% drop. That's 3,614 cases. That's also the lowest in the past 50 years, with the highest detection rate, or second highest detection rate in the past 40 years, 72.9%. For robbery, in 2023, we recorded 90 cases, a drop of 7.2%, and that's also the second lowest since 1969. Detection rate was up to 92.2%. That's a record high. In the past year, there were no bank robbery cases. There was no case involving genuine firearms or stun guns. For the 2 cases of Goldsmith watch or jewelry shop robbery, they were detected, and in fact, in an intelligence-led operation, the police caught the culprits red-handed. For burglary cases, we recorded a 10% drop. The amount involved also dropped by 25%. Similar to bank robbery cases, for burglary figures, they were lowest since 1969, and again, the detection rate was 38%, a record high. In 2024, the number of burglary cases saw a substantial change. In the first quarter of 2024, we recorded a 56% increase in burglary cases, with 30% increase in the amount of losses, and in particular, for burglary in village houses, the figure rose by 1.8 times. Now, the situation left much more to be desired, and we step up our effort by collecting intelligence and step up patrols at high-risk areas, especially village houses. We continued to mount publicity, and through different channels, we shared the message and tips on burglary prevention with members of the public in order to raise their awareness. We also made use of drones and the GFS in patrolling the sky at night. We also make use of other means by, say, setting up roadblocks to intercept suspicious persons and vehicles. As a result, in the second half of 2024, the crime situation had begun to improve, as at the end of last year, the number of burglary cases dropped by 10%. As for theft, the number of cases recorded was 22,433, and that's a drop of 3%. For shop theft, we recorded an increase, and that's a 27 increase. Comparing to the first quarter of 2024, there is a continuous increase. Now, similar to burglary, the theft figures throughout the year has dropped. In relation to snatching, theft from vehicle, also missing motor vehicles, we recorded record low figures. For blackmail cases, 3,031 cases were recorded. The majority of cases related to naked chat. That's up by 317 cases. That's also the major reason of a rise in violent crime figures. Now, the majority of victims were students, but the situation has improved. In 2021, the percentage of students being victims was 34.5%. In 2024, the figure dropped to just 18.7%. The police will continue to work with stakeholders, including parent-teacher associations, schools, and NGOs, in stepping up or raising the students' crime prevention awareness. On sex crimes, we recorded 77 cases of rape, up by 10 cases. The detection rate was 97.4%. Only one case was committed by a stranger. It was detected. For indecent assault, 1,185 were recorded, a slight increase of 2%. Around 60% of cases took place in public places and MTR stations. The detection rate was 77%. On serious narcotics crimes, the figure was recorded was 1,114, down by 3.4%. 129 such cases involved juveniles and young persons below the age of 21. There was a 35% drop in relation to cases involving students. Now, in 2021, we saw a peak. 430 juveniles and young persons were arrested for serious drug offences. In the past few years, we have continued. There is a continuous decline, and up to 2024, the drop recorded was 70%. For students arrested, cumulatively, for students being arrested, the figure dropped by 77%, and for non-students, 67%. Now, in 2024, we saw a staggering increase in the consumption of space oil as well as e-cigarettes. In light of the latest trend, the new legislation will come into force, and starting from the 18th of January, the police began to use a rapid test kit for space oil, or so that law enforcement officers could make use of the rapid testing kit for space oil in their enforcement efforts.
On trials in 2024, there were 2,325 cases, dropped 0.54%. The police of Guangdong, Macau, and Guangdong conducted large-scale joint operations from April to August, and later in the year, we conducted these operations where we arrested 8,303 people, we seized many drugs, and those with a market value of more than $400 million, and also millions of dollars in crime proceeds. Now, on mainland visitors committing criminal offenses, last year, a number of people arrested, 2,161, up 40%, mainly because there were more mainland visitors. Last year, 7.2 million people. That's the increase. But the people arrested made up just a tiny fraction of visitors from the mainland. For those involved in fraud and money laundering, there were 49 such visitors. Most of them were holders of stooge accounts. Now, for crime syndicates targeting mainland visitors, getting them to set up stooge accounts in Hong Kong, we mounted joint operations between the Hong Kong police and the mainland police. Last September, we also worked through the ADCC and also timely intelligence exchange with banks. We neutralized a cross-boundary money laundering syndicate. We arrested 14 people. The police will continue to remain in touch by exchanging intelligence with the mainland as we crack down on those crimes. On juvenile crimes, in 2024, 2,840 young people were arrested for criminal offenses, down 6.6% from 2023. Now, apart from the serious drug offenses, for young people involved in money laundering, fraud, robberies, or triad-related offenses, all those crimes saw a fall across the board in terms of young people arrested. Last school year, we conducted talks for more than 5,000 teachers on scam awareness, drugs, etc. We want to provide more such training for teachers in the year to come. For the third year in a row, we rolled out this chronicle about youth offenses. We're also working with the Education University on teaching materials. We also team up with the Education Bureau about a training camp. That's to inculcate self-discipline and resilience in students. The police works with other stakeholders. After the anti-extradition bill incident, we have seen changes through our effort. In the first 9 months of this financial year, when we look at the figures of people involved in the police mentor scheme and the police recruitment express, we saw a marked increase in applications, more than 30% increase. In 2024, we conducted a public opinion poll for the police force. For those aged between 18 and 24, the score we got rose by 37% from 2021. That shows our youth effort is paying off, and we will keep working on that. Now, national security. The National Security Law and the Safeguarding National Security Ordinance are now in force. As said, last December, we arrested 316 people. More than 60% have been prosecuted. Now, on the installation of CCTV cameras across the city. In April 2024, we started that effort, meaning installing surveillance cameras across districts. Last year, we installed 615 units of such cameras. This year, we will complete phase 1 installation, roughly 2,000 units. As at the end of last December, those cameras helped us detect 122 crimes. Among them, there were homicides, robberies, burglaries, etc. Those are all serious crimes. 202 people were arrested as a result. On CCTV cameras, with the aid of such units, 28 homicides, burglaries, and robberies, 90% of such cases, 25% of 25 such cases were detected within 2 days. That proves, with the CCTV cameras and also the input of our officers and investigation, the detection rate went way up, and that meant more effective policing. CCTV cameras helped us detect cases and also achieved a deterrent effect. To dig into the figures, we crunched the numbers. We looked at the crime figures. We found out that where CCTV cameras were in place, crime figures fell. That shows the cameras helped crime prevention and detection. Most cameras were installed in the second half of 2024. As time goes on, we will try to install 2,000 to 2,500 camera units each year, and that will mean even better results. Madam Chair, that's roughly all I have for the law and order situation of Hong Kong last year. In January, members expressed concern over a few matters, and I will be responding to these matters. On preventing and combating cyber scams, I have covered this point in my presentation. On job scams, people lured to Southeast Asia. I'm sorry, Commissioner, can you try to finish within 7 minutes? I'm trying to open the floor for questions by 3 p.m. Now, since the second quarter last year, the police force and the immigration department had received 28 cases of people, Hong Kong residents claiming being detained in Southeast Asia. 19 such people have returned to Hong Kong. Now, the task force led by the Security Bureau, including the police, is now actively following up on the cases so that the remaining 9 people can return to Hong Kong soon safely. Now, on begging in a public place, last year we arrested 48 people. For that, we prosecuted 46 people. On black spots of begging, we will step up patrol and enforcement. We will also step up intelligence sharing with the intelligence department. We will mount joint operations. On aviation security and counterterrorism, after the third runway opened, we have gone through some restructuring. We have now stepped up patrol in the precinct of the third runway. Auxiliary police officers now help out in patrolling the airport. Now for the northern part outside the third runway, there are now 2 layers of mesh wire. When one layer is being interfered with, an alarm goes off. There are also autonomous vehicles patrolling the area around the clock. If the wire is damaged, that will be detected. The SAR government and the airport authority will work closely, and we will keep working closely with the IATA to put in place airport security measures. The airport police district will also work closely with the airport authority. We will conduct joint drills regularly so that we can better coordinate and better respond to large-scale emergencies. That's all from me. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. On behalf of the panel, I want to thank the police force for the work on law and order and national security. And let's all work together. 17 members are waiting to speak. The Secretariat has issued a background brief for members. So let's do 3 minutes each member. The Commissioner and also the members, please note we have up to 4 p.m. Mr. Martin Liao, Mr. Gary Chen, Mr. Dennis Low, Mr. Ambrose Lim, Professor Chow Man Kong, Mr. Kitson Yang, Ms. Doreen Kong, Mr. Lai Tong Kwok, Mr. Dominic Lee, Mr. Chen Pui Leung, Dr. Kennedy Wong, Ms. Elizabeth Kwok, Dr. Johnny Ng, Mr. Benson Lok, Mr. Bill Tang, Mr. Ma Fong Kwok. Mr. Martin Liao, 3 minutes. Thank you. Telecoms fraud has seen the largest increase. The losses are also huge. Last year, many mainland students in Hong Kong fell prey to such scams and $235 million in losses. The scammers were able to say the name and Hong Kong ID card numbers of the victims, and that made the scammers sound real and legit. So that means for many scams to happen, scammers need to first collect the personal data of victims. Has the force looked into how the scammers got their hands on the personal data of their victims? Are there ways where you can step up work with the Privacy Commissioner, with financial institutions, and also other stakeholders to better protect personal data from leaks? And that way we can address scams at source. Commissioner, I thank Mr. Liao for his question. Indeed, telecoms fraud saw a marked increase because there was a new tactic, scammers posing as customer service staff, 5,570 such cases. And that was about the average increase in scams in general. On mainland students in Hong Kong falling prey, many students found out that the scammers called them and were able to say their name. And that's why the students thought the scammers were legitimate public security officials from the mainland. On that problem, we have been sharing intelligence with the mainland. The mainland students may have applied for their visas via an intermediary. When we have that information, we pass on the information to the mainland police. There were also cases where mainland students registered for telecom services, say phone services in Hong Kong, and then these students got a call later. So we will continue to investigate these cases.
Next, Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you. Madam Chair, I have a question from my sector. I want to know from the police whether they've received complaints in relation to bogus accountants. They claim to be certified public accountants, and also cases involving impersonation of accountants signing off audit reports. I'd like to know the complaint figures and whether the matters have been referred to the LEAs. I know that the police has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Hong Kong FRC. I want to know what follow-up action will be taken. Thank you for your question. As you said, in 2022, we signed an MOU with the Hong Kong FRC, and this MOU, or the AFRC, this MOU sets out the division of work between the police and the AFRC in combating financial crime, and we also sets out some joint operations on the financial statements. And since then, in 2023 to 2024, the Commercial Crime Bureau received altogether 4 cases referred by the FRC. And of these cases, 3 of the 4 cases failed to inform the FRC of the change of address and also disclosing the identity of the investigator of AFRC, so on and so forth. The last case relates to suspected offense in 20 AAZ of the offense, and that is in relation to prohibition of using certain titles, and also the and in fact, in that case, this entity is forbidden from providing auditing services, but this entity claims to be able to provide the service, and it also publicizes the services. Now, for these cases, they have been referred to the CCB for further investigation. Investigation is underway. If need be, we will also seek advice from the Department of Justice. We'll continue to work closely with the AFRC. Thank you. Any follow-up from Mr. Wong? Next, Mr. Gary Chen. Thank you, Madam Chair. 3 questions. Now, echoing what Mr. Martinell said, I'd like to speak on mainland students being victims of fraud cases. Last year, 318 such students fell into these scams, total with a loss of $230 million. I understand that the police dished out questionnaire surveys and worked with universities. Why is the problem still rampant? Has it to do with crime prevention? In fact, the police's work should start earlier, before students are admitted, so that for these new arriving students, they will be well informed earlier. Now, another point is about burglary in rural areas. I know that likewise this problem is serious, and I think it may not be efficient enough for enhanced police presence in rural areas, because we're talking about a vast area. How about using drones so as to prevent crime and to send out an alert? The third point is that last year I noticed 71 ill treatment of animals were recorded. 959 people were arrested as a result. Now, these cases are getting more prevalent. Apart from poisoning dogs, we also hear about very horrifying cases about the limbs of cats being pulled out, teeth being extracted, and during Chinese New Year, we learned about another case. The head of a black cat was chopped off in a ritual. Now, the situation is so serious. Despite having a dedicated team overseeing animal welfare, why is the problem so serious? Is there anything we can do? Why are the prosecution figures so low? 3 questions. I'll try to answer all of them. About deploying technology in burglary cases in rural areas, this is exactly what we've been doing. In the first quarter of last year, for village house burglaries, the figure rose by 1.8 times. Now, to tackle the surge, we have started to deploy drones in patrols, and we also enlisted the help of the GFS, Government Flying Service. Now, of course, with thermal imaging technology, we may use drones to perform nighttime patrols as well. And we've seen a decline in the village house burglary figures. Still, overall speaking, we've recorded an 18% increase comparing to the figure last year. About animal cruelty, in terms of the number of prosecutions, this is our observation. We have a team on prevention of animal cruelty in each police district, and we've also stepped up the capacity of each team in terms of investigation. But the biggest problem is that the victims in these cases are, after all, animals. It's impossible for us to take statements. So we do admit that in terms of prosecution figures, these animal cruelty crimes are not often prosecuted. So our way of tackling this problem is to step up intelligence gathering. We have an animal welfare ambassador scheme in the community. We've also enlisted the help of animal welfare organizations. We have stepped up intelligence gathering online. We do cyber patrols, in other words. We also enhance on professional capacity, and that is to say we have the Animal Watches program. On education and publicity, we want to start young, and that means we roll out an initiative in schools. We have the so-called pet corners starting from 2022. We appoint ambassadors in schools, and these ambassadors are responsible for caring for the pets in schools. And by doing so, we hope to nurture the sense of love for the animals since young. We also work with other organizations such as the AFCD and the Ocean Park in this regard. Last year, with the help of City University of Hong Kong, we enlisted 30 veterinary school students to be mentors of these ambassadors in primary and secondary schools. The ambassadors are taught skills to care for the animals. As for mainland students, well, how about we save that for the next member's question? I'm sure that this will come very soon. Mr. Dennis Leung. Thank you, Madam Chair. Deception is the major category of crime seeing an increase. 4,480 cases relate to deception. That's up by 4,656. 9,204 cases with phone scams. The increase amounted to 186.5%. That's about the 3-time increase. For job scams, 4,083 cases, up by 4%. The usual modus operandi involved the use of bank accounts and transfers, and the proceeds amounted to $9.15 billion. Now, is it possible to trace the culprits with the use of, with the help of banks, so as to boost the detection rate? Deception cases are rampant. Will the government consider legislative amendments to step up penalties? And also for education and publicity, especially for victims being lured to overseas countries for job opportunities. Is there something we can do? Are there new ways for job seekers to be more discerning about scams? I understand that there will be an amendment relating to the banking ordinance. Anyway, please take the floor, Commissioner. Now, we mentioned the surge of phone scams, and the majority of these cases relate to impersonation of customer service. As for bank transfers, we've been liaising with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. We have a suspicious proxy account alert system, proxy ID alert system. And that is to say, in the past 2 years, with this mechanism in place, we have been able to detect suspicious transfers involving e-platforms, online platforms, or transfers via ATMs or bank tellers. Under this suspicious account alert mechanism, if the account has been registered, then data will be stored on the Scam Meter Plus as well, and that once the transfer takes place, as a message will be sent informing the account holder that the transfer is being done to a suspicious account. Now, about your other question, in fact, we have stepped up our efforts to combat new accounts. And as I mentioned just now, we've expedited investigation and prosecution. We have also applied to the court through the prosecution to step up penalties. Is there something more we can do? We are reviewing the legislation. At the moment, we make use of the Organized and Serious Crime Ordinance, and Serious Crime Ordinance to prosecute money laundering offenses. But the ordinance provides a rather high threshold. We are making reference to overseas legislation. For example, in Singapore, they crack down on mule account activities via legislative amendments. Because under OSCO, we are required to prove that the defendant is aware of the crime proceeds. Now, for the legislative amendments in Singapore, the onus of proof is that as long as this defendant is aware of the account being used by another person, or if the defendant fails to take adequate steps to trace the origin of the proceeds, then this defendant will be caught by the law. And we are studying this method to see whether it can be applied to our legislation. About job seekers being lured to overseas countries, I'm sure that another opportunity will arise soon. So do answer that in a moment. Mr. Ambrose Lam. Now, the law and order situation in Hong Kong is very good. I'd say that we are one of the safest cities around the world. Now, we are very concerned about deception cases, and we all acknowledge the efforts made by the police. Now, I have a question on deals happening online. So my question is whether the police have also likewise noticed the trend. The other problem is, as mentioned by Mr. Gary Chan, we've seen a surge in burglary cases in the countryside, and I've also been told by rural residents that missing motor vehicles are particularly serious. And just right before the Chinese New Year, 18 vehicles were stolen. Now, I remember back then, the insurance premium for cars were jacked up as a result, up to a tenth of the price of vehicles.
Commissioner, thank you. First, on e-shopping fraud. That kind of fraud makes up a quarter of all scams. More than 11,100 cases. Overall, we had 44,000 scams last year, so that's a quarter of the total. We have taken a multi-pronged approach to crack down on e-shopping fraud. We do cyber patrol. We also encourage people to report suspicious trading platforms. If people file a report, the information goes into our Scam Meter Plus. So when someone tries to access that website again, they get an alert. We also ask platforms, web hosts, to remove suspicious websites related to scams. We also work with the HKMA and financial institutions to roll out the FPS Suspicious Proxy ID Alert. We want to focus on publicity and education. When people want to buy something online, they should choose reputable platforms. On rural burglaries, as I've explained earlier, I won't go into the specifics again. Now, on missing motor vehicles, cars being stolen, last year, the number of missing motor vehicles was at a record low. Around the Chinese New Year, when there are more missing cars, we step up action to crack down on that sort of crime. When people become aware of the crime, they should let us know. Professor Chow Man Kong. In 2024, most traditional crimes saw a fall in the figures. Nearly half of the crimes were scams, most of them being telecoms fraud. Some people were even lured to other countries. I want to delve into the detail. We've heard that we can only catch the stooge account holders, but the masterminds may be outside Hong Kong. We cannot get hold of them. Can we amend our legislation? Can we introduce stiffer penalties if it's organized crime? The penalties for traditional crimes are way stiffer than the penalties for emerging crimes. Otherwise, we cannot combat such emerging crimes effectively. As other members have spoken, mainland students in Hong Kong and seniors in Hong Kong are particularly vulnerable to scammers. Those people lose their lifetime savings, and that affects Hong Kong's effort to become an international education hub. So can we do more? Now we have the ADA, Anti-Deception Alliance. A dozen of banks are in the alliance. Those banks are popular with local residents. So for the particularly vulnerable groups, mainland students, for example, those students may bank with Chinese banks. Can we cover those banks as well with the Anti-Deception Alliance? And how many vacancies are there in the police force? How many new joiners are there? How many people are retiring? I know the police force has its plate full given the surge in scams. So maybe some kind of support is needed from LegCo, something we can do. Commissioner. For the people arrested for scams, most of them were holders of stooge accounts. The reason is fraud syndicates operate outside Hong Kong. They break our law while outside Hong Kong. Due to jurisdictional issues, we cannot arrest them. As for the people we can arrest, and we have arrested last year and in January this year, we neutralized 2 fraud syndicates. These fraud syndicates used deepfake to scam people. For these cases, we ask the court to hand down harsher penalties. For student account holders, we have also applied to the court for harsher penalties for those defendants. Now, on a more targeted approach for scam or potential scam victims, many mainland students in Hong Kong may bank with mainland banks in Hong Kong. Those students also talk to their telecoms providers. I've talked to students myself. Many such students banked with mainland banks, and they also used telecoms service providers from the mainland. So we enlisted the help of these banks and telecom service providers for our publicity efforts. But the point is whether the students paid attention to our publicity. That's what matters. So we will keep working on this. Publicity and education are the most important on fraud prevention. Should I also cover vacancies? Please be brief. We are still short of 6,000 officers. In recruitment, we have been very proactive over the recent years. We have come up with new recruitment strategies, and our effort is paying off. In the last financial year, the number of applicants last year went up 46% from the year before. In the first 9 months of the current financial year, we have also received 10,179 applications in the first 9 months of this financial year, and that's up 5%. We have also conducted recruitment drives in the mainland targeting Hong Kong students. Our officers also go to malls for the recruitment drive. When Hong Kong students pursuing overseas studies come back, we also target them in our recruitment drive. These new measures are paying off. Of course, we don't take just every applicant. We choose high-caliber candidates to be our officers. Yes, I can tell you're being very discerning. After all, you got more than 10,000 applications. Mr. Kitson Yang, I acknowledge the police's work, and that has led to an improvement in the law and order situation. Please keep up the good work. Overall, the situation was good, but we saw a jump in scams. People lost money. Some people were lured to other countries. And then people also got emotionally hurt because of romance scams. Now, my local constituents have told me about online romance scams. They were told to take out loans, etc. Police officers attend different events to spread the word about scam awareness. So apart from promoting Scam Meter Plus, can we also tell people about how the romance scams work? Some seniors are lonely, they want attention, and they fall prey to scams because of that. So can we do more in terms of publicity for these people? Now, I want to talk about prepaid SIM cards. Seniors use prepaid SIM cards for their mobile services because they don't need a monthly plans. And when these seniors call others, the other side gets a voice alert saying that this call comes from a prepaid SIM card. I know it's a scam prevention measure, but the problem is other people getting the call from prepaid SIM card users thought these were scam calls because people hang up the moment they get an alert that an inbound call comes from a prepaid SIM card. We already have real name registration for SIM cards. So can we find a way to minimize the disruption to people? Seniors prefer prepaid SIM cards over monthly plans because prepaid SIM cards are cheaper. Thank you. Now, on romance scams. Last year, romance scams fell 18.3%. We should keep up with the publicity. Anti-scam publicity would take more than the effort of the police. People are bombarded with a massive amount of information every day. Fraud prevention will take more than just the police. It will also involve the work of the HAMA, telecom service providers, and also the public. When you come across a scam tactic, spread the word, tell others about it. There's a kind of scam that targets seniors, and that's Guess Who I Am. 80% of such scams targeted people aged over 65. So last year, our publicity focused on Guess Who I Am scams. We enlisted the help of care teams. That's why last year, this kind of scam fell by 48.5%, and that was down to collective effort. We got people to help us spread the word. And that really made a difference. On prepaid SIM cards, I note the members' comment. It's good to have scam alerts up front because now people become more vigilant when they get the alert. Now, on further enhancing this measure, we can look at that. On real name registration for SIM cards, this has been in place for some time. Starting from October last year, people have been required to go through I Am Smart for the real name registration. If people use their passport instead, the telecom service provider will have to verify the identity of the customer face to face. Each telecom service provider allows each person to buy up to 10 prepaid SIM cards. As you know, there are many such telecom service providers on the market. It's also important to stop people from reselling the prepaid SIM cards they have. That will help prevent scams. Mr. Rincon. Now, my question is about mainland visitors committing crimes in Hong Kong. Paragraph 30 of the paper says, over the past year, an extra 613 such visitors were arrested. As we got more people coming to and from the mainland, and now we have the multi-entry visa, and that made life easier for travelers. Would that also mean more offenders in Hong Kong? So what strategies do the police have to prevent criminals from entering Hong Kong? Will we have a blacklist to bar those criminals from coming here? Now I want to turn to sexual offenses. Paragraph 16 and 17, rapes and indecent assault. I know our police have done a fine job. We don't have many such crimes. In many such cases, the suspects were not strangers to the victims. These crimes are top of mind for me. In cases of rape, the perpetrator was often not a stranger, and then non-consensual sexual intercourse happened. So have we found out why? Do we need more publicity to protect women? Now, I also want to share some observations. First, publicity. I know the Little Grape works well, but some people think this mascot is too lighthearted. We're talking about scams, tens of billions of dollars. So should we go for something that is not so lighthearted? In 2012 in Australia, they went for a cartoon mascot. It's called. There was a song called "Dumb Ways to Die." It was about reminding people to take care when people took trains. It sounded like a children's lullaby, and that tactic proved ineffective given the gravity of the matter. So apart from the Little Grape, can we have something more serious to promote the anti-scam message? Now on the law, can we step up our legislation to combat scams in the UK, US, and Singapore? New laws were enacted in recent years to fight scams. So I wonder if we could do the same.
Commissioner, for crimes committed by mainland visitors, as I said in the opening, we saw a rise of 39.6%. Indeed, mainland visitors have come to Hong Kong in droves, up to 7.28 million. So for mainland visitors committing crimes in Hong Kong, they accounted for only 0.006% of total visitors. For visitors coming from other places, they accounted for just 0.1%. Now, is there a blacklist? I can tell you the answer is in the affirmative. The relevant information will be passed on to mainland enforcement agencies. For sexual offenses, the perpetrators are some people known to the victims. Now, if we take a look at the case details, these perpetrators were mostly ex-boyfriends, boyfriends, or friends, relatives, former spouses, etc. We need to consider the circumstances of each and every case of rape to find out why. But on the whole, I do think that more should be done in terms of public education so that female victims can stay vigilant. On the Little Grape, I think that we need to take multiple prongs in sending out this crime prevention signal. There are different crime prevention strategies. We can't rely on just a single strategy. If you have doubts, please call 18222, the anti-deception hotline, and also please download the Scam Meter Plus app. These can help. Of course, we can't rely on the mascot Little Grape to complete our crime prevention strategy. The mascot serves to raise people's awareness, but what follows is that we need to mount other publicity strategies as well. Apart from the app, we also need to learn about, for example, different modus operandi, and you need to be aware of scammers ringing you. So in fact, we tell about the stories of deception cases. In fact, we've done most of them, if not all. That is why we advise everybody to tell friends and relatives around you the latest trend of deception. And as I said, we are looking into different legislative proposals. And Mem Chair also mentioned that the Hong Kong Monetary Authority is also studying another piece of legislation relating to bank accounts. At the moment, there is an exchange of information mechanism relating to business account holders. We want to expand this mechanism to cover individual accounts as well. I understand that the consultation exercise has concluded. They are going to fine-tune the legislative proposal in light of the views received, and so that very soon they can table this bill into the council. While we have only 25 minutes left, 9 members are waiting to speak. Please observe the time limit. I'll give each 1.5 minutes only. Mr. Dominic Lee. I thank the police for their hard efforts for safeguarding our lives and our properties. In the past years, we've seen greater public confidence in the police. I have 2 questions relating to the law and order situation. First, about the space oil. This Friday, you're going to submit a legislative amendment on the subsidiary legislation to list space oil as Part 1 poison. That's a dangerous drug. So, can you tell us something about the arrests and confiscation of space oil? The other point is about bogus refugees committing crimes, and that's an issue close to the heart of the public. I'd like to ask for some figures. We have the non-refoulement claimants, that those are bogus refugees. Can you tell us their crime rate comparing to the general public? First, to answer the question on space oil, we've continued to make arrests. In particular, in cases involving the use of social media platforms and trafficking. In the second half of 2024, we conducted an intelligence-led operation. In November, we arrested 99 people. 12 of them were juveniles. The youngest person was just 12. We also seized different types of drugs. Now, on space oil, again, I want to explain that there is not a panacea to all the problems. As you understand, on the 14th of February, we're going to submit a legislative proposal to list space oil as a dangerous drug. Starting from the 18th of January, we also began to use a rapid testing kit. Now, this may drive offenders to hide the commission of crime, but I just like to say that we will continue to crack down on these offenses. Now, some say that it is not effective just to enact legislation. These young people have emotional issues, but like I said, we don't have a single solution to all the problems. We need to have a combination, a package of measures to tackle these problems. As far as the police are concerned, we need to work with stakeholders, including schools, parents, NGOs. As I said just now, for serious drug offenses committed by young offenders in the past 3 years, there was a substantial drop of 70%. This is the result of a collaborative effort. So very quickly, please move on to bogus refugees. About NEC arrestees, that's bogus refugees. They accounted for 2.2% of total arrestees in Hong Kong, similar to the figure last year. They were mostly involved in theft cases, such as miscellaneous theft, shop thefts, as well as assault. Next, Mr. Chen Pulang. Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to repeat questions already asked. I'll observe strictly the time limits. One simple follow-up question that's on deception. the detection rate wasn't high. Exactly what is the detection rate for deception cases? Now, the total amount of losses was $9.15 billion. So how much of the $9.15 billion was recovered? In the future, are there ways to help us recover the proceeds from deception cases? The last question is about mainland syndicates. Mainland offenders. They mostly commit deception and shop theft. About fraudsters, can you tell us the modus operandi? How were they different from other forms of deception? Please also step up publicity and explain the MO to us. Detection rate for deception last year was 10.6%, similar to the figure last year. The major reason for this low detection rate is that, first and foremost, many of these deception cases happened online, or they involved phone scams. Majority of fraudsters rang from somewhere outside Hong Kong. Once the victim becomes aware of the situation, we're talking about weeks or even months after the commission of crime. So by the time we receive the report, it would be kind of too late. We also have fraud syndicates operating in places outside of Hong Kong where the law and order situation is not satisfactory, and because of this jurisdictional issue, what we do is to exchange intelligence with the overseas law enforcement agencies to improve the situation. Now, about recovery of proceeds, I'm afraid that we do not keep statistics. Mainland offenders and the usual crimes involved. Last year, for those arrested, most of them were mirror account holders. They worked with fraud syndicates. These syndicates reached out to these people through social media accounts. They were asked to open a bank account in Hong Kong, and then they would leave. So, like I said last year, we mounted joint operations with the mainland public security departments and arrested quite a lot of them. Next, Dr. Kennedy Wong. Thank you, Madam Chair. Close to 50% of crimes recorded last year were online deception. So my first question is about the establishment of the Cyber Crime and CSTCB of the police. Do we have sufficient talent in Hong Kong to tackle such crimes? Because, Commissioner, as you know, cross-boundary, cross-border frauds are prevalent. Is it possible to collaborate with other countries or jurisdictions? Because we all of us know about the handful of so-called black spots in Southeast Asia. Is it possible to step up cross-border collaboration? Now, in this day and age, are we using AI to detect crimes? It's quite difficult to detect crime just by manual labor. So is it possible to use AI to boost the detection rate? Finally, to pick up on what Mr. Gary Chan said, is it possible for the police to work with universities in Hong Kong by, say, holding seminars before these mainland students are admitted so as to raise their awareness against deception? Now, about the establishment, the CSTCB was established in 2015. It had an establishment of 180. It's now been expanded to 400. We are concerned about the detection of cybercrime, as well as digital forensics, as well as professional training for the gathering of intelligence online. We have been making sustained efforts, and we also work with Dublin University in Ireland to run some courses in relation to that's a master's degree course on the cybercrime. The first batch or the first cohort began in September last year. 30 colleagues were enrolled. Now, on cybercrime detection, at both the headquarters and the regional level, we have dedicated staff for the detection of cybercrime and financial crimes. On cross-border collaboration, this is also something we'll do. You mentioned some black spots. We do work with the relevant countries. As a result, we've been able to bring the victims involved back quickly. Using AI, this is the inevitable trend. We'll be leveraging technology. What about mainland students?
For mainland students in Hong Kong, when there's a university in a police district, our officers conduct publicity campaigns. There are posters on campus. There are posters even inside the cubicles of the toilets on campus. But then students, whether mainland or not, ignore the posters. That's not ideal. So what we're doing now is, as members may have heard, at universities, we want students to fill out questionnaires. At the end of last year, I joined my officers at a meeting with the university heads of the UGC universities. We discussed the current position. We want to take action on this, but we don't think that's going far enough. So last month, we talked to our country's anti-scam authorities and also the National Immigration Administration and also the education authorities. We wanted to find a way to address the problem. We wanted to start the education at root. The education targets not just the students but also the parents, because the parents pay for their children's education. So we told the parents of these mainland students what their options were if their children were ever told in Hong Kong to pay someone. Getting the work at the source right means the students will be less likely to fall prey to scams. 80% of mainland students falling prey to a scam were in their first year in Hong Kong, and these students got a call from scammers before the school year started, and you can imagine why. After the school year starts, the students may already be exposed to scam awareness information, so these students will become harder to scam. So this will involve talking to the immigration authorities. Ms. Elizabeth Quat. First of all, I thank the police for their efforts in keeping our city safe. I have some observations to share, and I also have a question. Now, first, on drugs. Space oil needs more publicity. Marijuana-related crimes are also on the rise. In some overseas countries, marijuana is legal, so they think it's okay to use marijuana in Hong Kong. So we have to step up publicity that using marijuana is a crime. Now, on sexual offenses, rape, indecent assault, both on the rise, and also sexual abuse of children, 663 such cases, intolerable. We are very much behind in our regulatory regime about sexual offenses. We need stiffer penalties. We need a stronger deterrent effect. The police can also enhance publicity so that we have fewer such crimes. Now, I turn to scams. 40,000 scams last year. That's staggering. For mainland students in Hong Kong, we may have to go to mainland celebrities so that we can spread the word through their network, and that way the message can reach mainland students and their parents, and then they can see the risk of scams. Many crimes happen online. New technologies have been used by scammers. Criminals may also use drones more often before we have legislation on the use of drones. So my question is, do the police have plans about using drones for patrols? And are there plans to use DeepSeek or other AI technologies for law enforcement? And what will we do when there are AI or drone-enabled crimes? Now, on marijuana, in 2024, marijuana-related crimes fell by 16% from 2023. On youth involvement in drugs involving marijuana or CBD, we have done much in publicity at schools and for parents. This will require ongoing effort. On scams, we work closely with the mainland, and that includes publicity. We will keep up the work. On low-altitude patrol, we're making full use of drones. Drones help crime prevention work that also helps in rescue. Last year, we set up a force cadre in the police force. 600 officers are in that cadre, and they are qualified to operate drones in policing. On the use of technology such as DeepSeek and ChatGPT, we have an information security wing in the police force. They are studying ways to use new technologies to assist with policing. Dr. Johnny Ng. Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to acknowledge the police's work. We have seen high detection rates for traditional crimes. Many such rates are at record high. Now, scams, that's on the mind of people. 40,000 people, 40,000 cases last year. That's one scam every 12 minutes. So you can imagine we are more than an hour into this meeting. Many scams will have happened. Now, on mainland students in Hong Kong, indeed, questionnaires on campus help. We should also talk to those students and their parents before they come here. Now, publicity aside, can we also think about publicity ethical hacking? Meaning, let's test it out to see if our efforts work. Can we find an organization to work with us to see if our efforts work? 2,000 mainland visitors came here. They set up stooge accounts. But these people may have returned to the mainland. Do we have figures on these people subsequently being arrested in the mainland? Because the figures we have cover only people arrested here. More than a year ago, JPEGs was what happened. Do the police have any update on JPEGs? Now, on the JPEGs case, as said at the end of last year, 2,600 reports were received. 666 people said they would not pursue the matter. Now we tried to contact 659 people in vain. 1,300 people had their statement taken. 68 people were arrested. We have frozen more than $200 million in assets. We're trying to track the flow of money in the wallet of JPEGs. We're trying to gather evidence to show that JPEGs actually had no investment activity going on. We've been seeking the legal advice from the Department of Justice to see when we can start the prosecution. On scams, we've seen a persistent rise. The rise narrowed last year. For scams, it's part of a global trend. Last October, we went to Singapore for a global scam awareness summit. The organizer told us over the past year, total losses in scams reached $1 trillion. 67% of such cases happened in Hong Kong, in Asia. And when you look at the per capita loss, Hong Kong was only middle of the road. So other places have lost more money through scams. But those cases involve countries, to be fair. In terms of per capita losses, Hong Kong is middle of the road. On stooge account holders, we don't have figures on stooge account holders subsequently arrested in the mainland. We can talk to the mainland's public security authorities about this. Now, on ethical hacking, that's a good idea. Getting things right with education at source is part of the work. And then we compile figures on whether the situation has improved. That can help. Mr. Benson Locke. Madam Chair, I want to focus on scams. I've been assisting victims of fraud through bank transfers. Some bank accounts are suspicious, but no action was taken. That's bad. So can we have measures, or can we have the law amended so that banks can take action on suspicious personal accounts? Last year, $9.1 billion was lost through scams. Many scammers were out of town, so our local police force could not catch them. So when more fraudsters out of town targeted people in Hong Kong. The commissioner said they were sharing information with the mainland police and police from other places. So last year, have we mounted any joint operations with police elsewhere? How many people have we arrested? How much of the crime proceeds have we recovered? Will there be further joint operations? Now, on publicity, I know we've done much in publicity, but scam figures are still rising, so our publicity isn't comprehensive enough. Scams are like a virus. Viruses mutate. If your vaccines fail to keep up, we are left vulnerable given the mutant strains. So I say, if the police come across new forms of scams, please double down on publicity so that people, the public, can stay ahead of the game in staying vigilant to such new scams. We work with banks, indeed. We have worked with banks on many occasions. Every year, we have an award ceremony for smart bank employees. When bank employees come across suspicious transactions or bank transfer requests, these employees ask questions. We have a three-tier mechanism. The bank employees first try to talk the potential victim out of it. If that doesn't work, they get the police involved. So our officers visit the branch and explain the matter to the potential victim. Commissioner, I need to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Many scammers operate out of town. They're overseas. That's why I say publicity and education matter. Joint operations are something we have been mounting all along. As I said earlier, last year, we joined the mainland's public security authorities and also the police from Singapore and Malaysia. We mounted a number of joint operations. 290 people were arrested. Those operations worked, and we will keep up with that. Now, on new forms of scams, when new scams happen, we try not to take a whack-a-mole approach. We stay alert to what's going on in other countries. When we come across those scams in other places, we start the publicity. Last year, there was a kind of tech support scam in Singapore. So you use your computer, you get a screen saying that your computer may be hacked, and then you're given a tech support hotline. When we heard about those scams before a case was detected in Hong Kong, we started the publicity. And then such scams happened in Hong Kong, but those scams remained few and far between. So that's part of our publicity. Now, on recovering the proceeds of crime, do you have the figures? We do not compile figures on that. We do not maintain figures on the fraud proceeds recovered.
Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank the Commissioner, the Security Bureau, and the Hong Kong Police Force for their good work in relation to people lured to Southeast Asian countries for non-existing job opportunities. They were forced to work in labor camps, and they were released only upon the payment of ransom. 28 cases were recorded. Now, I see that things are happening at the national level. Our country is cracking down on the camps together with the authorities in other places. So you mentioned out of the 28 cases, 9 Hong Kongers in the cases have not yet come back, as you understand. Among these 28 cases, did any of the victims depart from Hong Kong only 2 or 3 months ago? And that's against the backdrop of heightened public awareness. They still went to these places. My other question is on enforcement. I want to know whether there is sufficient legal backing to help you enforce the law. Now, among these 28 cases, how many of them involve somebody in Hong Kong escorting them to these countries? Or did the whole process happen online? My last question is this. Are you confident in bringing the remaining 9 Hong Kong residents back to Hong Kong? Commissioner, about enforcement and investigation tools, my answer is in the affirmative. As I said earlier, apart from mounting a rescue operation in Hong Kong, we conduct investigation locally. For example, recently we arrested a female on the 13th of January. She was arrested for conspiracy to commit fraud. She tried to lure 2 females to Southeast Asian countries with a view to imprisoning them and forcing them to work. Now, we're still looking into the case. For victims coming back to Hong Kong, We also inquired with them as to the circumstances under which they were enticed to go to these countries. For example, messages were received via social media platforms or Telegram channels. These messages contain job ads for positions requiring no or low academic qualifications, and these victims were taken to Southeast Asian countries for the so-called job opportunities. What about legislation? Is there sufficient legal backing to help you enforce the law and investigate into these cases? Enforcement tools. As at present, there are sufficient tools for us, but we'll continue to keep in view any new MOs and see whether, as far as legislation is concerned, more can be done to boost our efficiency. I'm sorry, two follow-up question. Now that with heightened public awareness, did any of the victims go to these places just 2 or 3 months ago? And the last question, are you confident in bringing back the remaining 9? In December 2024, 3 victims in deception cases got involved, and those happened only in December 2024. As a result, we've stepped up public education. At the airport, every week, we dish out information leaflets to passengers departing for Southeast Asian countries. But what's more important is to pay attention to people around you. Say if you have a family member telling you that they are going to a Southeast Asian country to work, then it may be suspicious, and you can ring the anti-scam hotline anytime. We need to draw a line here in the interest of time. The last member to speak is Mr. Paul Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for extending the meeting for me to ask this short question. Now, the focus is on deception today. The Commissioner just now was asked whether there are figures to explain about the proceeds of crime. And you mentioned that these statistics are not kept. My question is this. Legislative amendments could be put in place, or a mechanism could be set up to intercept bank transfers so that the victims could recover the money lost as quickly as possible. At the moment, we do not have this mechanism. Commissioner, can you take this suggestion? Now, you have set up the ADA with 10 banks, and you've also shortened the time, and you also have the FPS, suspicious proxy ID, etc. All these are good initiatives. But my question is, after freezing the proceeds, can you reduce the cost of recovering the money for the victims? Because at the moment the procedures are protracted, many victims are deterred from applying for recovery. Can you shorten the time frame and reduce the cost? Commissioner. Now, the problem with recovering of proceeds at the moment is that very often more than one victim are involved, and it takes time for us to trace the handing over of money for victims. But let's just say that I will look into ways of streamlining the procedure. Commissioner, before I give you the floor to give a conclusion, please note that members' major concern is deception, and that the detection rate was 10.6%, and that's on the low side. Deducting detection of deception, the overall detection rate was 47.9%. So deception was the major cause of the low detection rate overall. Anyway, we see a rise in 1.7% in terms of detection rate, and overall speaking, the law and order situation is good. I'll now give you the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, I'd like to mention our operational priorities. The first one is safeguarding national security, and that's our top priority. We will continue to enhance our capability of safeguarding national security. We'll also enhance the gathering of intelligence and enhance our capacity in countering terrorist activities. We'll also continue to raise the public's awareness against terrorism and national security threats. We'll also focus on combating deception and frauds. The third priority is to ensure the smooth conduct of the national games. This is a new item adding to the annual Commissioner's operation priorities that highlights the importance of the event. Overall speaking, in 2024, the overall crime figures increased by 5% comparing to the figure last year. The major reason is detection. Now, the discounting scams, in fact, the overall crime figures dropped by 185 cases. We'll continue to step up our efforts in crime prevention. Thank you. I thank the police for their hard work again. You've just told us the Commissioner's operational priorities. So let's see if there is anything under AOB. If not, the meeting's adjourned now. Thank you.